Have you ever put on a brand new pair of shoes or boots and they felt like they were made just for your feet? Or maybe that coat that fit just right after trying on so many others, almost as if it was tailor-made for you. Well, in the handgun world, we don't really get a lot of that, at least I don't, with these very bear paw-like hands. So when I can get close, I'm happy, but usually I'm making an adjustment of some type or another for even some of my more favorite handguns. Today, I found the gun that was made for my hand. Let's take a look at the Browning High Power. This one is a Belgian model from 1976. We're gonna shoot it, we're gonna take it down, we're gonna talk about it, a little bit of the history. Really excited about this 9mm pistol. Can't wait to shoot it again. So I'm going to get some things out of the way real quick. This is a shooter. This is not a collector's piece. It's not like Browning High Powers were exactly rare, although the made in Belgium models are a little bit harder to find than those that are either made in Belgium and assembled in Portugal or made by other companies who've copied this design in one way or another. But just taking a look at this one, definitely got some blemishes on there that I'm not excited about. I have no plans of re-bluing this because the part that is blued is beautiful in my opinion. You do see where there are some areas that are challenged. Here you see where the bluing is worn off from being held. You also see there that it's a 1976 model. One of the few serial numbers that makes it easy for you like that. You can also see, if you take a real close look, that someone has had some issues with how do you take this firearm down, and they've scratched it up. That seems to be a real common theme in the used firearms market. But just flipping this over, one thing that I did do is I have already replaced this screw right here, which is part of the magazine release mechanism, because someone had boogered that thing up like you wouldn't believe, had that kind of Z groove in it from using the wrong kind of screwdriver. What's really annoying in my opinion is, why would you do that to any firearm? You can go out and get a hollow ground set of bits like this that are perfect for just about every firearm. And this is a setup you can get into for less than 50 bucks if you don't want to get individual wood-handled gunsmith screwdrivers. But that's neither here nor there. We did replace that part. You can see, like I said, on that one side in particular is where the pitting seemed to be more pronounced. But this has been around. This has definitely been around. I do love the shape of the grips on this. I think they're very well preserved. And I mentioned earlier about the fit in hand, and guys, I just can't tell you how perfect this is for me. Now, there's been some discussion about, with this kind of hammer that's not bobbed or hollowed out, that you have the possibility of having it come back and bite your web of your hand, much like an older 1911 might. If you grip this properly so that your finger, the pad of your finger is contacting the trigger, you're not going to have that problem. I think a lot of guys jam that up as far as they can in their hand as a starting point, and that's not how you do it. And here's an example of that alternate hammer type that can be used on the Browning high power. But I shot this for a couple hundred rounds today and didn't have that issue. We'll get into that. But this fits and points so wonderfully. I thought 1911s were the ultimate for that. Always been a big fan of the CZ75 for the feel in hand. The CZ75 is basically a single action, double action knockoff of this firearm, by the way, guys. But man, I'll tell you what, I picked this thing up, and like I said in the intro, this fits my hand like a glove, and was a joy to shoot. In terms of recoil management, and in terms of being able to get back on target quickly, I just can't tell you enough how much I like this. And today, for purposes of comparison, I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to compare it to the standard here for me, which is the Glock 19. Now, I think this is a sexier pistol. I think it's more fun to shoot. There's a lot of things that I like about the Browning high power that I don't like about the Glock 19. But I've kind of used this as my comparative basis in so many gun videos, and the reason is because this is a very prolific firearm. It's been out there for a long time in different versions. It's very dependable. I shoot it fairly accurately, and it conceals very well. Well, we're going to talk about the weight of this with a polymer frame versus this high power. I will tell you that this has 2 more rounds capacity. This is a 13 round capacity magazine. However, I must also tell you at the same time, you can get 15 round capacity double stacks for this. I probably won't, but they are available. So we will make that comparison. And why don't we start right off by putting these guys on the scale. This gun will not shoot without a magazine in it. So if you have a round in there, if you have even just want to pull the trigger and dry fire it, you can't do that unless it's cocked with the magazine in there. That's just the way it is. But it's a double stack magazine, and you can see just in terms of purposes of comparison, here's a Glock double stack magazine, and the Glock is slightly wider but not much. Okay, so it's a very similar size. We're going to start out with the Glock, which we're going to expect, as usual, to be lighter at 1 pound, 5.6 ounces. Okay. Let's see what we get with this guy right here. 1 pound, 13 ounces. So it's 8 ounces heavier, about a ½ pound heavier than the Glock. One of the things I noticed right off the bat, these magazines and these older guns like the older 1911s, they don't pop in and out as easy as the flared oversized mag wells and stuff, but not a problem for me. Right off the bat, just I'm noticing how easy it is to point and shoot this gun. It's just a completely natural type of scenario, and target acquisition, everything, even though these are smaller, kind of what I'd call mil-spec or GI style sights, not a problem. Lines up very well, and as you'll see, looking at the first couple targets, here's the first one, and it's real clear right off the bat that this fires dead on as long as I do. Here's the second target after getting used to that trigger a little bit. That's 10 shots, many of them in the same hole. And we're going to, of course, compare to this Glock 19, as we're likened to do when we look at 9mm handguns, and just taking some shots. Big advantage with the Glock, with a taller, more pronounced set of sights with big white dots on them. And, you know, you'd think that that would be enough of an advantage, but let's see the difference. So my very first shots were at 10 yards, and this was using the high power. Don't pay attention to these ones around it. My next 10 was this group right here. I decided to take a real careful 5-shot group and then go to that Glock that we always compare to. And as you can see, I'm shooting that high power a little bit better. These shots right here are shot from 25 yards or 75 feet. And then the broader groups you see here are rapid fire. And that's really impressive to me, not in terms of my own shooting, but compared to how I shoot rapid fire with other guns. There's not a firearm that I can shoot as well as this one right here, and it's the first day I shot it. Pay attention in slow motion here to the lack of muzzle rise. So many of the firearms that I'm used to shooting have a little bit of that upward flip, and this one, I think it's by design, just happens to have a lot more direct back type of scenario. I really like it. And then, of course, shooting it in rapid fire, not a problem. It's a great firearm. Now, this is the original tilt barrel design. I'm going to show you what that means in a minute. But basically, 95% of the modern semi-automatic pistols are a takeoff of this particular type of firearm design, which is called tilt barrel. So, in order to go ahead and make sure we're clear, in order to go ahead and take this down, you're going to notice right here that you've got a notch for your safety, and then here's this notch right here. What's that for? Well, that notch is to engage your safety when you have the slide pulled back for takedown. It's simply a matter of punching out your takedown pin, but you need to make sure it's in the up position. It's spring loaded a little bit. So you push this up and then you push out, and there you go. There's your takedown pin. It's kind of a big one. But I'm going to go ahead and disengage that safety now, and this slides right off to produce what is a very familiar design to anybody who's been involved with or taken down and looked at the insides of a modern semi-automatic pistol. This one reminds me of a CZ in that there's no bushing or anything like that. This is just a solid piece, and the spring fits inside there. So you take that down, you pull that out, and there you go. You'll notice too, instead of a barrel link, this little piece right here fits in this groove right here. So that is how this fits together with the spring, and then your takedown pin goes through there. If you look real close in here, you'll see that there's just a little detent right there that's spring loaded, and that helps hold your slide release / takedown pin. Pretty cool, huh? So basically you have a single piece barrel. This has had a couple hundred rounds put through it today, so maybe a good job to just clean it out a little bit once or twice, and then we'll take a picture of what it looks like down that bore. But this should all look very familiar to you, okay? We're going to compare this side by side with that Glock in a second, and if you didn't know any better, you really wouldn't know what you were looking at. This does have that magazine disconnect safety, so if the magazine is not in, you cannot pull the trigger. A lot of guys don't like that in today's modern world where we're looking to do the ability to fire if your magazine comes out. Also looking to push the button and have that magazine slide right out. It doesn't. You can take that magazine disconnect feature off of there if you're interested in quick change of magazine and things like that, which I'm not going to do with this firearm. It's a relatively light piece of forged metal that's been used to create this frame. And like I said, this just fits in my hand so nice. I just can't even tell you how good that feels. But if we want to compare this to how a Glock takes down, it's real simple. Okay, with the Glock, you rack it, you pull the trigger, your takedown pin is this spring-loaded item right here. And then let's look at the similarities. You've got a spring that's held in place in the front. Obviously a double catch type of mechanism. And then you've got this barrel that comes out. And when we say tilt barrel, basically that means as the slide moves back from the blowback, from the recoil, that barrel tilts and gets out of the way versus 1911 where you got a barrel link and it slides straight back and forth. This is a very positive thing in terms of loading, plus it eliminates a part. And there you have it. And I told you, you would notice a big difference. Let's take a look. Now I mentioned how light the frame was on that Browning high power. On this thing right here, it feels like air, and I guarantee you that's where that half a pound of weight is just on the frame. But if you want to take a quick look, striker fired versus single action only, so obviously your hammer is coming up, it's coming into contact with your firing pin right here, whereas on your left it's striker fired, it's all an internal spring that's loaded, you have no hammer. Browning was actually working on some striker fire stuff when he died. But as you come up and you see, you basically got what John Browning referred to as the slide rule principle, where he envisioned a ruler that's sliding on top of another ruler. Maybe that's why we call that the slide. But that's very little difference in terms of design principle, and like I said, they're both tilt barrel. Here are the barrels. You can see that from an overall length standpoint, you're looking at about 3/4 of an inch longer barrel for the high power. And a lot of similarities here, guys, just a lot of similarities. But if we want to take a look, you can see right here that the inside of that bore on that high power is very clean, it's very nice. It's about what you'd want it to be if you compare it to a firearm that's brand new. Not a world of difference. Not a world of difference. But these two firearms are as simple to take down and put together as you can get. Like I said, with the Glock, you've got this spring-loaded takedown pin, so it's a part that doesn't come out, but it's the same basic principle. What so many other companies have done, you know, now with the polymers, is they have basically taken all the same design principles and used lighter weight materials. Not a lot more to it than that, guys. Now, one thing I want to point out, these guns were not designed to handle hollow point type bullets. Now, I know some of them can. I know it's really a function of the way the feed ramp was designed. But I know the guys that have had cycling issues typically have experienced them with hollow point bullets. Now, with that in mind, you know, I'm always shooting FMJ at the range. This is pretty much a range gun, not that big a deal. But I know some of these types like this are probably going to feed okay. This is a Spear Gold Dot, and if you see, it has a nice curve to it that's going to be kind of friendly for the feed ramp. But the question is, will it feed this? Will it shoot this? I don't know. I did not try that today. At some point I might. I don't have any concerns, especially with this stiff spring, about this being able to handle a plus P type round or anything like that. But I do not plan on using this as a carry gun. I think it's a cool gun. I think it would make a darn good carry gun, but I can't see wanting to take blued firearm like this and put it up against sweat and wear and stuff like this. I just don't see that. I did experience a couple extraction issues early on shooting today, and then I didn't anymore. And it was typically a situation where it just didn't extract the round from the chamber. Now, the chamber I did not clean before I shot, so maybe that was part of it. I think if you look right here, this is the extractor, and if there's any ongoing issue, I'm probably going to replace the extractor spring. This is a 1976 gun. It's all original parts, and I'd be very surprised if maybe in the course of the last 43 years, there hasn't been some issues with that spring wearing out. We don't know, but that's the first thing I'd look at. Consistency-wise, I didn't have any of that issue, though, when I was doing double taps or rapid fires or things of that nature. So kind of surprised about that, but something to keep the eye on. But the first thing I think I'd do would probably be take a look at the extractor spring. And it's relatively easy to replace, guys. I also noticed, and you'll see this when you look at the shooting videos, that the rounds are really good at ejecting about this angle, so at about like 4 o'clock, except the very last one always wants to go like this. And I wonder if maybe I've got simply an issue where the follower on this magazine, which is an aftermarket Italian magazine, it's got that flat base plate like I like. Maybe there's an issue with a follower. If you look at the older style, this is what the follower looks like. So it's a little bit different, and so who knows? But we'll keep an eye on that. But we did have a couple instances where the round did not eject. There was a couple times where the last round only did not eject, which I thought was strange. Even stranger, like I said, that it kind of went away as we kept shooting. I wonder if that's just a matter of just needing to give that chamber a really nice cleaning. Who knows? I wonder how many of you have ever heard of a gentleman by the name of Dieudonné Saïve. He was a Frenchman, and along with John Browning, gets credit for the development of the high power. Yes, folks, unlike the 1911 and so many of John Browning's other masterpieces, Browning started this pistol at Fabrique Nationale, also known as FN in Belgium. Browning started this pistol, went through a lot of the development, and then he died. So this Frenchman, who also worked at that same facility with Browning, Dieudonné Saïve, finished the design. It's not really clear what parts of this were Browning's, what parts of this belonged to Monsieur Saïve. However, this was a collaboration, okay? So it's real important to know that. A lot of people consider this John Browning's finest design, and like I said, in collaboration. This firearm is in production by one company or the other by name of Fabrique Nationale, Browning, you name it, from 1935 to 2017. Great firearms used all over the world. In fact, this particular firearm was one of the few firearms that was used in production from opposing sides in World War II. It was used by various branches of the Allies, and it was also used by the Germans. They invaded Belgium, occupied the country, took over the Fabrique Nationale, produced these with Wehrmacht stampings. So the Germans had brand new production Browning high powers. The Allies had new production Browning high powers going after each other with the same firearm. I think that's pretty cool. So this particular one, like I said, this is a shooter. It does look pretty in certain lights. You look up close, maybe not so much, but to me it's pretty, and it shot wonderfully today. I've never enjoyed shooting a 9mm as much as this one. Every other 9mm I've shot, there's been some form of compromise in terms of adjustments, or how does it fit in hand, or how does it point, things of that nature. And this is just a charm. It's an absolute charm. I can understand why some people call this the best semi-automatic handgun ever devised. I could see me being somebody that joins those ranks. Not going to get too excited after the first day of shooting it. So I can't believe I've gone as long as I have without shooting one of these. Where the hell have I been? This is the stuff, guys. If you can get your hand on one of these, do it. I've seen the values of these all over the place. The most desirable are the Belgian made or the FN stamped versions of this firearm. I love it. I don't know how much more we're going to talk about it, because you guys are going to get tired of hearing me extol the virtues of this firearm. But do your research on the internet. You're going to see, guys, that this is one heck of a well-reviewed gun, and there's good reason for that. I'm looking forward to working with this one. Like I said, if there's some bugs in it, if I need to replace the extractor spring or something, and maybe that's the purpose of a future video. But we're going to continue putting rounds down the pipe before we make determinations like that. This is Dr. Drake 63 saying so long.